House resumes. Yes, Honorable Minister McIntyre.
Excise tax. Whereas Section 11 of the Excise Tax Act, Chapter 6906 of the 2017 revised laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica provides that the goods specified in the second schedule to the Act are exempt from excise tax. And whereas Section 4(5) of the Act authorizes the Minister to amend the second schedule of the Act by order published in the Gazette. And whereas Section 4(6) of the Act provides that an order may under subsection 5 shall be subject to affirmative resolution of Parliament. And whereas on the 6th day of December 2023, the Minister made the excise tax order 2023, and whereas it is desirable that excise tax amendment order 2023 be affirmed, be it therefore resolved as follows. This order may be cited as the excise tax order 2023, 2, the excise tax amendment order 2023, which was laid on the table of the House on the 14th day of December 2023 is affirmed.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Excise Tax Order 2023, which is before the House for approval, is mainly intended to amend the excise tax charge on tobacco and the various types of alcohol. Mr. Speaker, as I had already mentioned in my budget address for this fiscal year, this particular measure was requested by a number of residents during government's pre-budget consultation. The general feeling among those who proposed the measure is that government should take some action to reduce the consumption of alcohol. The order increases the per liter cost of alcohol and the per kilogram of tobacco by 25 cents effective September 1, 2023. Note, Mr. Speaker, that we have already imposed increase in accordance with the provisional collection of taxes, which allows government to begin collecting the tax while it prepares and seeks approval of the tax legislation. Mr. Speaker, it is too early to tell whether the tax increase is meeting the desired objective. I should be in a better position to report to the House in about a year's time. In the meantime, we look forward to the support of the members of this House for this small increase for a good cause. As a government, we have declared repeatedly our intention to continue to give prominence to the need to significantly reduce the incidence of NCDs in our country. This is just one of the several measures which will assist in this fight. Mr. Speaker, there are two other amendments to the schedule. One, the first is to allow the President to receive the same benefits as for members of Parliament in relation to the import of motor vehicles. And two, the order is to temporarily increase the age of motor vehicles imported by taxi drivers from 5 years to 6 years. This amendment pertains to taxi drivers who are currently eligible for excise tax exemption on vehicles less than 5 years. This temporary increase in the age of the vehicles from 5 years to 6 years will expire on March 31st, 2024. Mr. Speaker, I commend the order to the House.
The motion is before the House for debate.
Mr. Speaker, since everyone is in agreement with the Excise Tax Amendment Order 2023, and obviously we can see the benefits of this regarding the increases on alcohol and tobacco and the effects it will have on cutting down the incidence and prevalence of NCDs in our country so that we can have a healthier and productive workforce in our country. That is an excellent idea that both sides have agreed to support this excise tax. You have to also put it into context in the sense that there are many other things we're doing to cut down NCDs. For instance, on sugar sweetened beverages, the different taxes we have on those. And you must have seen, you may notice over the past few decades, you have seen much less advertisements of tobacco and the sponsoring of different events by tobacco companies. So all this just complements and augments what we've been doing before. And it is good news that both sides of the House is in accordance with this excise tax, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
So this concludes the debate. On the motion, well, there is no debate. So I will now put the question. Be it therefore resolved as follows. 1. This order may be cited as the Excise Tax Amendment Order 2023. And 2. The excise tax, be it therefore resolved as follows. 1. This order may be cited as the Excise Tax Amendment Order 2023. And 2. The Excise Tax Amendment Order 23, which was laid on the table in the House on the 14th day of December 2023, is affirmed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The motion has been affirmed.
Second and third reading of bills.
I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled Stamp Amendment Act 2023.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Stamp Act, Chapter 6801 of 2017 Revised Laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica was enacted to regulate stamp duties in the Commonwealth of Dominica. This bill before the House seeks to amend the schedule of the Stamp Act, Chapter 6801 by imposing a 2% stamp duty on the receipts given for or upon outbound money transfers through money services regulated under the Money Services Business Act, Chapter 7882. The 2% will be calculated based on the monetary value of the transfer. Mr. Speaker, the stamp duty will be payable by the people who are transferring money and collected by the money services businesses. The money services businesses will then remit the stamp duty collected to the Comptroller of Inland Revenue no later than the 20th day of the month following the date on which the duty was collected. This means that people wishing to send money out of Dominica via the money transmission businesses, namely Western Union, MoneyGram, and JN Money Transfer, will pay 2% stamp duty on the amount being transferred. The comptroller has been given similar administrative powers as those used in other tax laws to ensure that the duty is collected and remitted to the government on time. Mr. Speaker, I submit for the consideration of the Parliament the Stamp Amendment Bill 2023 for its consideration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The bill is before the House for debate.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to wind up debate on the stamp, act. Since both sides of the House are unanimous and they have agreed that is a great intervention, a good intervention, we move forward. And I appreciate their indulgence and I appreciate their support for this bill on stamp duty. Stamp Act 2023.
This concludes the debate. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Stamp Amendment Act 2023 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will now be read a second time.
Stamp Amendment Act 2023.
The bill now stands committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. I have to report that the bill shortly entitled Stamp Amendment Act 2023 passed the committee stage without amendment. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Stamp Amendment Act 2023 be read a third time and passed.
I beg to second, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Stamp Amendment Act 2023 be read a third time and pass. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Stamp Amendment Act 2023.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled Income Tax Amendment Act 2023.
I beg to second, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, in presenting the 2023-2024 budget address, I informed the House that government is implementing measures to reduce the operating cost and to increase the efficiency of the public service. On one such measure to be implemented is the reduction in the use of paper. This is in keeping with our objective of becoming the world's first climate resilient country. Another is the repeal of the return filing requirements for individuals whose only source of income is from the government employment. It is in this regard we are proposing to amend the Income Tax Act, Chapter 6701 of the 2017 revised laws of Dominica. We have decided that in order to give employers within the private sector sufficient time to prepare, this new policy will only apply in this first phase to employees within the public sector. As such, the measure will apply only to government employees with effect from income year 2024. Mr. Speaker, over the last 20 years, instead of increasing taxes as had been done by previous governments, this government has consistently implemented tax measures to assist in alleviating the tax burden on our citizens. We want to assure those taxpayers that administrative measures will be put in place by the Inland Revenue Division to facilitate the processing of tax adjustments for those individuals who may not qualify to file but require their taxes adjusted for purposes of mortgage interest, interest on student loans, sickness benefits, health insurance, and mortgage insurance. Mr. Speaker, over the past 20 years, we have reviewed existing legislations to determine whether improvements can be made and have implemented various tax measures, all of which have resulted in improved administration and increased compliance, as well as millions of dollars remaining in the pockets of Dominicans. This particular measure will save the time of the employees, reduce the cost to government, and allow the Comptroller of Inland Revenue to redeploy the resources in areas of higher risk to revenue. I look forward to the full support of the members of this Honorable House for this amendment. Mr. Speaker, I now commend the bill cited as Income Tax Amendment Act 2023 to the House.
The bill is before the House for debate.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, let me thank members on both sides of the House that for this Income Tax Act 2023, which they've all agreed, which is why they're not objecting to this, and this is highly appreciated. And that's also from the point of view, Mr. Speaker, that this bill, let alone the efficiency that we're going to derive from this bill in terms of the filing, but it's also cutting down on the amount of paper that we'll be using. And as you know, we want to be the world's first climate resilient country by 2030. So protecting our trees and our forests is of prime importance. And the Minister of Environment is very pleased with this bill. And I think the entire country would recognize this is in sync with our bigger vision for a climate resilient country and how we manage our forest reserve. So it's beyond just the efficiency that we'll derive from this, but it's also keeping our environment in mind. So, and as I said earlier, we are government and a country can do many things at one time. This is a perfect example of how we can kill two birds with one stone and how we progress from here. So I'm very pleased that both sides of the House are in agreement with this Income Tax Act, Chapter 6701, and this is good. This is good for our country, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Income Tax Amendment Act 2023 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will now be read a second time.
Income Tax Amendment Act 2023.
The bill will now stand committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. report that the bill shortly entitled Income Tax Amendment Act 2023 passed the committee stage without amendment. Those in favor? No, sorry. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Income Tax Amendment Act 2023 be read a third time and passed.
I beg to second the motion, Mr.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Income Tax Amendment Act 2023 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Income Tax Amendment Act 2023.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled Cooperatives Amendment Act 2023.
I beg to second, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, as indicated in the budget address for fiscal year 2023-2024, the Financial Services Unit Act, Chapter 6303 of the 2017 Revised Laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica deemed credit unions as financial institutions carrying out financial service businesses and requires them to obtain a license to operate. Currently, credit unions are operating without the license required by law. Therefore, the amendments to the Cooperative Societies Act, Chapter 7803 of the 2017 Revised Laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica, which are currently before the Honorable House for approval, are required to facilitate the credit union's compliance with the law. Mr. Speaker, the bill with the amendments which have been circulated proposes to insert a new section in the Cooperative Societies Act, Section 25A, which makes provision for the payment of these licenses to the Accountant General on or before December 31st of every year. The license fees are set out in the second schedule of the bill and are as follows. For credit unions whose total assets are below 25 million, the license fee is 10,000 per year. For credit unions whose total assets are 25 million and above, but below 50 million, the license fee is 20,000 per year. For credit unions whose total assets are 50 million and above, but below 100 million, the license fee is 40,000 per year. For credit unions whose total assets are 100 million and above, but below 5 million, the license fee is 60,000 per year. And for credit unions whose total assets are 500 million or above, the license fee is $100,000 per year. As announced in last July, in the 2022-2023 budget address, these fees are payable by December 31st every year for the following year, starting this December 2023 for calendar year 2024. Mr. Speaker, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank is responsible for regulating and supervising banks on the island, while the government is responsible for regulating and supervising the other financial institutions, including the insurances, offshore banks, credit unions, money business such as MoneyGram and Western Union. All of these financial institutions, except the credit unions, have had to obtain and renew their licenses annually in order to operate. Fortunately for the credit unions, they have been allowed over the years to operate without the prescribed license, as government failed to make the necessary amendments to the Cooperative Societies Act. Bear in mind that these amendments should have been made 15 years when the Financial Services Unit Bill was approved by Parliament. As a government, we have the view that the proposed fees are reasonable. These fees are based on the size of the credit unions, and we encourage the credit unions to view these fees as their investment in the sound regulation and supervision of the credit unions to protect the interests of their members and ensure financial stability and good governance practices within their credit unions. So far, they have been receiving these services and benefits, but have not been investing or contributing to them. Mr. Speaker, we have also taken the liberty to restore the first schedule of the Cooperative Societies Act to this bill. This schedule, which pertains to the constitution and procedures of Cooperative Societies Appeals Tribunal, was part of the Cooperative Societies Act No. 2 of 2011, but this schedule was inadvertently omitted in the 2017 revised laws. So, Mr. Speaker, we are merely proposing to reinstate the schedule. The language from the original bill, which was approved by Parliament in 2011, remains the same. Mr. Speaker, I now commend the bill to the Honorable House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The bill is before the House for debate.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes, Senator Henderson, you may proceed.
Season's greetings to everyone at the sound of my voice. I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous 2024. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my contribution to the bill presented in this honorable House to amend the Cooperative Societies Act, Chapter 7803. Mr. Speaker, I refer to the Section 25A of the bill before us today, cited as the Cooperative Societies Amendment Act 2023, which speaks directly. I did not ask permission to refer to my notes.
So we'll ask for permission.
May I please have permission to refer to my notes?
Yeah, permission granted.
Thank you. I refer to Section 25A of the bill before us tonight, cited as the Cooperative Societies Amendment Act 2023, which speaks directly to the amendment of the section to now include annual license. This is the real reason why we are here in Parliament this Christmas season. The Act is amended by inserting the following Section 25A(1), which reads, "A person registered under this Act to carry on the business of a cooperative society shall pay to the Accountant General the relevant license fee specified in the second schedule for the transaction of the cooperative society's business." The table in the second schedule displays the category of assets from below $25 million to $500 million and above, and the annual license fee, which range from $10,000 to $100,000 per annum. Mr. Speaker, below $25 million really mean a cooperative society who holds asset valued from $0.1 to $25 million will pay an annual license fee of $10,000. I think this is unbelievable. Our cooperative society can be defined as a voluntary association of individuals or legal persons united by common bond who have come together to pursue their socio-economic goals for their own benefits. I listened to the Minister for Finance on DBS Morning News earlier, and I listened to him earlier there while he presented the bill, who expressed that only the financial cooperatives will be affected by the annual license fee. However, the amendment from the bill we have here presented does not specifically state this. Allow me to reiterate the facts as set forth in the bill. Section 25A1. A person registered under this act to carry on the business of cooperative society shall pay to the Accountant General the relevant license fee specified in the second schedule for the transaction of the cooperative society business. So, if the financial cooperatives, that is the credit unions, are the only cooperatives expected to pay the annual licensing, why isn't this specified in the bill presented here today? Because there's no way that non-financial cooperatives, such as the Kalinago Multipurpose Cooperative, the Dominica Essential Oils and Spices Cooperative, the National Association of Fisherfolks Cooperative, and the other active cooperatives will be able to afford this annual license fee. Mr. Speaker, we currently have 16 active non-financial cooperatives on the island. The others are a bit inactive due to financial constraints. It is my fervent hope that the statement made by the Minister for Finance on the news this morning is in fact the truthful one, and that these non-financial cooperatives who are already struggling to operate in this present economy would not have to pay an annual licensing fee. And I saw a document when I came that speaks to an amendment of this to say credit unions. So this is amazing. We can't afford to have any more non-financial cooperatives becoming inactive at this time. Mr. Speaker, an increase in the assets under management, that's the AUM, the Minister of Finance will know what that means, is a positive sign of growth in any business. Notwithstanding, asset growth is not necessarily a measurement of profitability. Case in point, with the closure of the foreign banks, a lot of those cash were moved to the credit unions, thus increasing the assets cash. Now, given the state of the economy under this reset of a government, I haven't used that word in months, I missed it. The demand for loans is not great. So, the credit unions ended up with excessive liquidity and the need to pay interest on such savings. Mr. Speaker, this means that there is an increase in interest expenses and reduction in profitability. I can speak of increase in insurance premiums due to property evaluation every 3 years, which causes an increase in depreciation, which will cause a decrease in declared surplus. And I can go on and on and on, showing you the path of the credit union's inability to afford to pay these draconian licensing fees on their assets every year. It has been brought to my attention, however, that the Dominica Cooperative Societies League submitted a proposal to this reset of a government requesting a more palatable contribution from the credit unions on island. We are here today with the same information presented during the 2023-2024 budget debate in this bill. So I am left to assume that further review of those exorbitant amounts were not done. The use of assets to determine the fees charged to the cooperatives annually certainly was not done with the best interests of the cooperatives in mind. I mean, who did this analysis? Assets, not surplus, two different things. I stood here in this honorable house in July and debated why we should not proceed with this annual licensing of the cooperative assets. The Minister for Finance, in his final comments, stated that I am deceiving the people. Well, I expect those type of comments from anyone practicing in a field that they are not well studied and experienced. Dr. Mack is the Minister of Health, especially on that level. The members of the cooperative society knows better, and I stand with them and for them. I understand. I understand. Publicly stating that if the credit unions were to pass this annual licensing on to the members, that each member would pay approximately 12 cents per annum. Again, I heard this on the news this morning. Minister of Finance, who did the calculations for you? Because the math not mathing. What's more deceitful or inaccurate than that statement? Those exorbitant fees will cripple the credit union's ability to render financial assistance to its members through its corporate social responsibility and other member upliftment projects and services. Mr. Speaker, the research conducted by the Dominica Cooperative Societies League Limited shows on page 4, table 2, the credit union licensing regimes in the Caribbean as of July of this year. This information is current. The data collated clearly shows that the request of this reset of a government from the cooperatives in annual licensing fee is extreme. Some countries like Belize continues to operate with no fees. Countries like Montserrat, Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana pay a small affordable rate. Antigua Credit Union pays an annual certificate of continuance fee of $250 annually, while St. Vincent Credit Union pays $25 for their certificate of continuance, and this is valid for 1 year. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me to not put my recommendations forward. Every time I stand in Parliament, I'll be remembered for coming with recommendations. Every time I stand there, I come with a recommendation. I don't come and criticize. I always do my research. I come with recommendations. Take it or leave it. I prefer you take it. One of my 2 recommendations as follows. Follow the islands who charge a very small fixed certificate of continuance fee valid for 1 year to the cooperative. If this recommendation does not work for you, as it relates to the financial cooperative, based on an analytic review of the credit union's viability with its board of directors and management team, a small fee can be agreed upon. If any such license is charged, this should be based on the financial outcome for each financial year. This should be based on the institution's surplus, not its assets. A proper review of the cooperative's financial stability annually will avoid pressure on the credit unions to pay. Let us bear in mind that a credit union cannot pay dividends to members if it is at a loss during the financial year. The same should apply to this annual licensing fee. Let's avoid the possibility of compromising the credit union's ability to pay dividends to its members. Let us look at the surplus and not the assets. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to wind up the debate on the Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill 2023. And I thank Senator Henderson Reid for supporting the bill. Actually, everything she said supports the bill. Mr. Speaker, it is not a tax on credit unions. That is why it is not on surplus. That's basic. It's not a tax on credit unions. That is why it's not on surplus. That's basic, that's simple. So thanks for supporting the bill on this regard. It is a license. That is why you pay on size, because it's a license. You have to understand this. That's basic stuff, Mr. Speaker. I'm actually surprised. Let's move along. Mr. Speaker, the larger your assets, the larger is your credit union. What's so simple and what's so difficult to understand in this? So thanks for supporting the bill. So both sides have supported the bill, and I really appreciate you supporting the bill, although it was from the other side. We're grateful for this and really appreciate your support of the bill. Mr. Speaker, we can proceed.
Yeah. This concludes the debate. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Cooperative Amendment Act 2023 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will not be read a second time.
Cooperatives Amendment Act 2023.
The bill will now stand committed to the Committee of the Whole House to be considered clause by clause. Resumes, and I have to report that the bill shortly entitled Cooperative Amendment Act passed the committee stage with some minor amendments. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Cooperatives Amendment Act 2023 be read a third time and passed.
I beg to second the motion, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Cooperative Amendment Act 2023 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Cooperatives Amendment Act 2023.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled Children, Care and Adoption Amendment Act 2023.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, this Honorable House on April 25th, 2023 enacted 5 harmonized family model legislation intended for the protection of vulnerable family members, particularly children, the elderly, and those with disabilities. In addition, those family laws established mechanisms for access to justice as efficiently as possible and provide administrative pathways to give effect to the laws. Permit me, Mr. Speaker, to make mention of the enacted laws, namely, number 1, Status of Children Act, number 10 of 2023, Maintenance of Children Act, number 11 of 2023, Children, Care and Adoption Act, number 12 of 2023, Maintenance of Spouse and Parents Act, number 13 of 2023, Domestic Violence Act, number 14 of 2023. The newly enacted family laws are designed to support the preservation of fundamental human rights as enshrined in the Constitution. Cognizant of the importance and need to sensitize pertinent stakeholders on the Family Acts in pursuit of this mandate, and given an increased recognition of the capacity development needs, the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Social Services conducted sensitization and training sessions to educate the practitioners, law enforcement officers, and the general public on the relevant provisions of these acts. Gaps were identified in the newly enacted acts, as well as the need for revision of the Children, Care and Adoption Act, number 12 of 2023, particularly the adoption component of the Act. Mr. Speaker, the Children, Care and Adoption Act, number 12 of 2023, is designed to protect children from abuse and neglect in a manner that ensures that the best interests and welfare of every child within our society is prioritized. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, a very important provision of the Children, Care and Adoption Act is the adoption of a child in his or her best interest. This in itself should help to protect children by ensuring that adoptive parents are well suited to meet the varied needs of the adopted child. Mr. Speaker, the government of Dominica recognizes its fundamental role in the process and is fully committed to its responsibility to protect children from abuse and neglect and to ensure that the safety, welfare, and well-being of every child within our society is prioritized. Mr. Speaker, one of the actions taken to ensure the effective and efficient implementation of the Children Care and Adoption Act, number 12 of 2023, is the appointment of an adoption committee to give more governmental oversight in the adoption process. The committee, as mandated by the Act, is responsible for an array of related matters such as placement of a child for adoption, adoption procedures, and inter-country adoptions. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the government remains dedicated to ongoing efforts to provide better care for our children. This is supported by the initiatives being undertaken by the Department of Social Services. Despite the Children Care and Adoption Act number 12 of 2023 having been enacted and other ongoing initiatives, there remains a challenge with its implementation, which requires the intervention of this Honorable House. Conversely, in Section 2 of the Children Care and Adoption Act number 12 of 2023, court is defined as magistrate's court. The effect of this is a transfer of the adoption jurisdiction from the High Court, where it has traditionally been, to the magistrate's court. This transfer of adoption jurisdiction from the High Court to the magistrate's court raises constitutional as well as practical concerns regarding adoption matters. Mr. Speaker, this is supported by legal advice, and according to the case law, the transfer of a jurisdiction traditionally held by the High Court to a lower judiciary, magistrates, is unconstitutional and accordingly void. Additionally, Section 148, which is a transitional provision, is intended to deal with the applications which begun under the repealed Adoption of Infants Act, Chapter 3703. As it is now, the section inadvertently does not allow the High Court the flexibility to deal with adoption applications. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the current state of affairs has resulted in a few adoption petitions being adjourned because of the transfer of jurisdiction from the High Court to the Magistrates' Court. Certain matters which were filed at the High Court before the Children Care and Adoption Act came into effect on July 1, 2023, are currently pending. Mr. Speaker, the intention is to ensure that all pending adoption cases receive a speedy hearing, especially given the fact that there are children waiting to be united with the adoptive parents during the Christmas and thereafter. The Ministry of Health, Wellness and Social Services, in its thrust to ensure the smooth and effective implementation of the law, submits for the consideration of the House the Children Care and Adoption Amendment Bill 2023. Amendment of Section 2 of the Act is accomplished by deleting the definition of court and substituting the following. Court means the magistrate's court, except in relation to provisions dealing with adoption, in which case it means the High Court. This would have the effect of reinstating the jurisdiction of the High Court in relation to adoption matters. Section 121 of the Act is amended in paragraph A by inserting a comma immediately after the first appearance of the word adoption. Section 148 of the Act is amended by deleting subsections 1 and 2 and substituting the following. If an application for an order was made under the former Act, that application shall be continued under the former Act. If an order has been made in respect of a child under the former Act, this Act applies if that order is brought before the court for review. This amendment would therefore authorize the High Court to continue to deal with the outstanding adoption matters under the repealed Act. Mr. Speaker, one may wonder why return to the House so soon to request an amendment to a piece of legislation which was recently passed in the House. It is very important to understand the reasons for amendments to any piece of legislation. Amendments may be introduced to address conditions or circumstances and procedures that were not predicted when a piece of legislation initially became a law. Simply put, amendments make changes in provisions of law to better serve the needs of users, and we have a responsibility to those whom the law is meant to serve. Mr. Speaker, we should always be cognizant that the care and protection of children is the responsibility of all of us, and not only the parents. According to the old cliche, it takes a village to raise a child. Additionally, let us ensure that in all actions and decisions, as well as administrative processes concerning the child, the safety, welfare, and well-being of the child are given paramount consideration. By prioritizing the best interests of the child, we are contributing to the overall well-being of our nation's gems and paving the way for a brighter nation. With these few words, Mr. Speaker, I commend the Children Care and Adoption Amendment Bill to the Honorable House for consideration.
The bill is before the House for debate. Yes, Honorable Minister Laville, you may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to register my admiration for the Minister in bringing forward this proposal for this amendment. One could easily say that here it is, we brought forward a suite of family bills merely a few months ago, and here it is, we're coming with changes. But like she has said, and again, I wish to register, this is for the children of Dominica. Care and adoption, that's serious business. You know, the children are among the most vulnerable in any nation. And Mr. Speaker, in our process of reviewing and in our process of stakeholder sensitization, of course, we saw things where there were possible changes that could have been made. And in this case, where there was the misrepresentation, where in fact magistrates court really should have been the High Court. And I wish to suggest that, you know, continued review process and stakeholder consultations, if we see anything that transgresses our intentions in any way, we will come back. There will be no shame in that, in coming back, Mr. Speaker, because our government is not one that is bothered about looking good. Our preoccupation is doing good, Mr. Speaker. And in so doing, the changes that are being proposed are, in fact, for the benefit of the children of Dominica, to introduce efficiencies in the process of adoption. And that is, in fact, what the minister is proposing. And I admire her bravery, her resolve, her tenacity, and her courage. And it is my absolute pleasure to be working with someone like that. And even with that, with those tremendous virtues, Mr. Speaker, equally so is that spirit of compassion too for the children. And I must in fact register that as well too. And I'm just proud to be part of a government that really in fact expresses no shame in saying we erred in a particular area, there was an oversight, and also too, it's not only by us, there were others who were consulted, and it was seen later, and very quickly when it was brought to the AG's office, that recommendation was made as to how we are going to address this matter. There are others who may have said, let's try to fix it, let's try to hide this, but again, that's not us. It's about making the best decisions in the interest of the children of Dominica to give them the best possible chance at survival that they could have. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, just a couple of words, if I may, on this. The reality is that, and I think I needed to say it because legislation is not a precise science. So human beings draft legislation. And sometimes they see lots of things and they try to encapsulate as much as they can. But almost inevitably, there are things that you miss and there are things that come to light during the practice of whatever area that the legislation is seeking to address. And clearly in this instance, and this was harmonized legislation. Different jurisdictions have different arrangements, and sometimes in the process of seeking to moderate, amend, revise the legislation to suit your particular jurisdiction, people miss things or things that have a certain application in one jurisdiction doesn't necessarily have in the other. And often those things only come to light during the course of practice. In this instance, the definition for court in this jurisdiction would have created the problems that have come to light in terms of the ability of the High Court, which is where adoptions are dealt with here, to be able to deal with matters based on the definition that was in the piece of legislation. So it's a relatively minor amendment, but it has significant consequences. And perhaps this is a good example of why people need sometimes to recognize that drafting is not a simple exercise, or you just figure you want something and you just go and write it. It's not an essay. You have to consider many aspects, and it has to fit and be able to address a number of situations. So these are simple amendments. They're amendments that have come to light once the court sought to actually apply the legislation. There has been discussion of these pieces of legislation over quite a bit of time, and of course, as the minister just indicated, if other areas come to light, whether they may be errors or whether it may be things that need to be done to make the actual application of the law more effective, then of course they will be done. And I stand to support the amendments here. It is really a simple exercise, as the amendments indicate, but it's a very important exercise. There are a number of children who are on the point of adoption, and for the reasons that have been indicated and others, this will be a wonderful piece of legislation to enable a number of children to have a much, much better Christmas than they would otherwise have. I say children, but I know they're also parents, because a few of them have actually been in touch with me, people who are in the process of seeking to adopt and have really require this amendment to allow them to go through. So Mr. Speaker, this is a very necessary amendment, and I commend it to the House.
Yes, Honorable Dr. Vince Henderson, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to commend Minister of State in the Ministry of Social Services, the Member of Parliament for the Lapland constituency, Honorable Dr. Cassandra Williams. I want to thank her for taking the bold step to ensure that we can quickly respond to seeking to perfect the legislation to facilitate the care and adoption of our children. We came to this Parliament several weeks ago for the passage of the Child Care and Adoption Act, and they recognized that there were some challenges. I'm very happy that we were able to move so quickly, because prior to that, it took us a long time to get there. And now I'm very, very encouraged by the pace at which we're able to seek to correct some of the deficiencies in that legislation to give effect to the intention of Parliament. And I'm very happy that we're able to do that. I'm also encouraged by the fact that a special unit within, or department rather, the Department of Social Services has been created to facilitate the care and adoption of our children. This is a very progressive move, and I hope that the ministry will continue to work in that same spirit and to ensure that we can be responsive, caring, and of course, that we can work closely with the people who give care to our children. And of course, that includes the foster parents, the various employees of the ministry, the Department of Social Services, the people within the legal system, the lawyers, the magistrates, and all those who play a role to ensure that our children are given care and are protected. I do hope that as we continue in that same spirit, we'll continue to provide training to ensure that we can provide support to children, not only the children, but to the parents. The parents who themselves sometimes have tremendous difficulties dealing with the responsibility of parenting. And I hope as we continue within that spirit, we will see much more coming out of that ministry. And with this contribution, I wish to support the amendment of the Child Care and Adoption Act.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to express sincere gratitude and commendation to members of the House who have provided their full support to the bill. At this time, I also wish to express profound gratitude to the Attorney General and the Bar Association for their guidance throughout this process. Mr. Speaker, I wish to reiterate that the amendments being sought from this Honorable House will undoubtedly allow for the adoption matters currently pending at the High Court to be expeditiously dealt with. Noticeably, Mr. Speaker, the current Act has a mandatory provision for certain individuals by virtue of their profession to report child care and protection matters. The Act also makes provisions for the protection of individuals who so report child welfare concerns, encouraging persons to help protect our vulnerable children. And it also provides for support for child care services so that children in need of care have access to necessary resources and support. I wish, Mr. Speaker, to commend this bill for passage into law.
This concludes the debate. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Children Care and Adoption Amendment Act 2023 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will not be read a second time. A third time, sorry.
Children Care and Adoption Amendment Act 2023.
The bill will now stand committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. House resumes. I have to report that the bill shortly entitled Children Care and Adoption Amendment Act 2023 passed the committee stage without amendment. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Children Care and Adoption Amendment Act 2023 be read a third time and passed.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Children Care and Adoption Amendment Act 2023 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Hold on.
Children Care and Adoption Amendment Act 2023.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, while I'm on my feet, I would like to wish all Dominicans and members of this honorable house a season of love, joy, and peace. Mr. Speaker, during this Christmas season, for those of us who have too much cake, too much wine, too much punch, let us share with somebody in need. Let us buy a toy for a needy child, Mr. Speaker, and share the true meaning of Christmas, Mr. Speaker, which is love. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to wish all my constituents in Wesley, Palmtree, and Woodford Hill a Merry Christmas, Mr. Speaker, and they know that they can rely on their pal rep and they will continue to get the representation that they truly deserve. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the constituency of Margot this Christmas would be bright, Mr. Speaker, with the level of representation that they have on the other side, Mr. Speaker. I would like to make one recommendation to Senator Paris, Senator Henderson, and Senator Henderson Reid, and Honorable Charles, Mr. Speaker. There is this credit union, they have a savings where it's a Christmas club, where every month they could put a little something and give to a needy person, Mr. Speaker. Because I heard Senator Paris earlier talking about we, and he represents the people and the people. But Mr. Speaker, if you want to represent people, there must be a level of empathy shown to the people. Mr. Speaker, I get this sense, and just to give Senator Charles a heads up, I get the sense that he actually wants more than to represent the people in words, Mr. Speaker. But in order to get that vote that Senator Paris is looking for, you need to show a level of empathy, Mr. Speaker, to the people, and not just.
You are winding up. Are you winding up?
And not just in words, Mr. Speaker.
Are you winding up?
Mr. Speaker, I would like to assure.
No, I would like the honorable minister to wind up actually.
Mr. Speaker.
So let's move to the adjournment.
Mr. Speaker.
Let's move to the adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to assure that the Dominican public, that while this Labour Party government continues to take this country to new levels, we assure them that your Labour Party government is working, Mr. Speaker. It continues to be safer with Labour, and we continue to be the only and best choice to lead this country forward, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that the House be adjourned. Stein and I.
It has been moved and seconded that the House be adjourned. Sign it aye. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. You see, everybody agree. So, House is adjourned. Sign it aye.